Hi everyone, my name is Marty Woznicki. I'm the Vice President of the Neuron ESB product team. I'm here today to run you through a high to mid-level technical demo of some of Neuron ESB's core features. As I go through the demo, I hope you'll see the flexibility and ease of use we've worked hard to build into the platform. For those of you who've never heard of the product, Neuron ESB is an application services and workflow integration platform built entirely on Microsoft.NET. The latter is important, especially if you're a .NET shop, because it means that you can use existing .NET resources like .NET assemblies, WCF, and existing Windows workflows to extend solutions built on our platform. This also means that native Neuron extensions like custom adapters, process steps, and workflow activities can all be written using Visual Studio and C#, letting you use the skills you already have. More importantly, we built Neuron because we thought it was crazy that businesses had to invest in long-term consulting contracts and specialized resources just to integrate their environment. Our goal with Neuron has always been time to market, ease of use, and putting you back in the driver's seat. As you can imagine, as an integration broker, Neuron has a number of capabilities that allow you to solve complex integration problems. Everything from messaging, service brokering, workflow automation, and general integration come out of the box. In fact, every feature in Neuron ESB is out of the box. In the first part of our technical demonstration, we spent some time on the business process engine. We discussed and showed how it can be a critical piece in enabling integration between systems and resources. How, among other things, it can be used as a basis of a service API, provide message mediation and service composition capabilities. But we also discussed what it can't do, and that's provide a state machine, business processing resiliency, activity tracking, the ability to correlate events back into a running instance of a process. Business processes also don't support long-running business processing scenarios, things that may very well take hours, days, weeks, or months to complete. That's where workflow comes in. In addition to the business process engine, Neuron ESB also ships with a stateful workflow engine, supporting failover clustering, restartability of workflows, visual activity tracking, custom correlation and long-running transactions, what some call saga patterns or compensated transactions. Because of its capabilities, workflow is often used to automate internal processes based on the receipt of published information. For instance, workflow could be used to automate a new hire process where calls to different systems may take place more slowly over time as a new prospect moves through the hiring process. Part of the process may require receipt of an event in the form of a manager approval before moving to the next step of the process. And at any time, we should be able to see exactly where within the process we're currently at. And for whatever reason, if there was a system failure, the process could be restarted from where it failed so that it could continue without having to start all over again. Pretty powerful stuff. Besides the typical long-running workflows, Neuron also supports request-reply type workflows as well as singleton workflows. The former can be exposed as a request-reply type service call, using the service broker to expose it as a SOAP or REST-based API, while the latter can be used to process a set of like messages. A good example of this would be batch or data aggregation scenarios. Neuron actually ships samples that show you how to use all three types of workflows. Under the hood, Neuron ESB uses the Windows Workflow API directly. The benefit of this, users can import existing WF-based workflows or workflow activities directly into Neuron ESB's workflow designer. You can do in Neuron just a lot more. Let's go ahead and see what it takes to build and run a workflow within Neuron ESB. The Neuron ESB workflow capabilities are configured in several places within the Neuron ESB Explorer. The designer is hosted in the Processes tab, workflow endpoints are created in the Connections tab, while hosting of the workflow endpoint is configured in the Deployment tab. Okay, we're back in the Neuron ESB Explorer. This is where we create workflows, same place where we create business processes, the Processes designer. Now here, we'll just do the exact same thing. Tool button, create workflow. This is going to bring up a quick wizard. You can create normal workflows, request-reply workflows, correlated workflows. Yes, a workflow can be exposed as a request-reply type service. And correlated workflows are just a singleton pattern where you might have one instance of a workflow processing a large set of messages, of like messages, that is. Correlation is all about defining what makes a message or a set of messages unique. and Neuron supports custom correlation. Now, workflow is very different from business processes, as we discussed earlier, right? Business processes are all about real-time, fast, low latency, not maintaining state between activities, great for message validations, great for service composition, scatter gather patterns, things of that nature. But there's no recoverability, there's no restart ability. You can't see at some point in time where you are in a process. Workflow is just the opposite. It's all about long running. Right? You might have workflows that could last minutes, days, weeks, or months. You can correlate events back into workflow. They're restartable. At any point in time, you can see exactly where you're at within a workflow. They support saga patterns, compensated transactions, lots of great things in all state. And failover. If a workflow fails on one machine, it can literally start where it left off on another machine. That's why people use workflow, to automate processes where you need that kind of business resiliency. So let's go ahead and create a normal workflow. You can see the environment's very similar to the business process engine, where you have a design surface, a toolbar, libraries on your left, toolboxes on your right. In this case, there's about almost 100 different workflow activities, including a lot of Neuron-specific activities like our designers and whatnot. Now, one of the first things we'll do, we'll create this workflow. We'll give it a name. So here, let's change the name to Demo Correlated Workflow. Excellent. Now we just need to start adding shapes. First thing, this is WF, so we'll add a sequence. Drag it on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a workflow that's going to take that incoming message. It's basically going to subscribe to a message from a topic. And it's going to take that out, send it out to a file drop using one of our adapters, sending out to a MQ series queue using one of our adapters. Then we'll go ahead and write some code similar to what we did with the business process demo, iterate through and log some of the environmental variables to show what you can do there. And then we'll wait. We'll wait for an incoming request message. From there, we'll take a look at that message, and we'll call a service, payment service, some of the elements that we've created in previous demos. And then from there, we'll take that response and we'll actually publish it to a topic where this test client can actually subscribe to information. We'll do this as runtime, but we'll also test it right in the designer. Now, all this is really easy to do. I've created the sequence. Let's go ahead and call out to some of our adapters that we've created previously. So, has a similar workflow activity as the process designer, adapter endpoint. Drag it in, drag another one in. Notice it has message, arguments I need to fill in. Well, if you go into this, you can see that we have default arguments already set up. So message, that's the actual Neuron ESB message. That's actually already set up with every workflow. And that's the message that the workflow instance is actually subscribing to. So you have access to all that, but you also have access to the entire Neuron configuration and the environmental variables. We'll show you how to access those within the C# stack. And some of these activities access them directly as well. So in this case, I know I want to call the, let's see, the file subscriber demo. There we are. And also the MQ series subscribe demo. And I'm going to use that existing argument, message here, message here. All right, pretty simple to configure these. Well, next on the hit parade, let's go ahead and I'm just going to bring this down a little bit more. Excellent. I'm going to add a C# step so that you can do a lot of things. Same thing that you can do. There we are. Auto expands. I personally like to see this in its own tab, so I'll just do edit code, pop it in its own tab so I have the same experience that I'd have if I was in the business process engine. Let me go ahead and I'll just type some same code in. String.empty, right? I can type in variables just like you do in the process engine. Here, I'm not going to really use those, but let's go ahead and say account URL. And notice I have environmental variables available to me. So I'll just go account URL, just like so. I have the ability to log information, log.info, account URL, outstanding. And I can iterate through everything for each RS and environmental variables, just like so, and we'll just log this as well. Info. Let's do some format specifiers here. Get the right thing. Just like so, value equals, just like so. And key, yes, dot value, perfect. So things you can do, but what we want to do here is actually initialize our correlation properties. Now, remember what I said, Neuron workflow actually supports this idea of custom correlation. Now, a correlation set is used to basically define the uniqueness of a message or a set of messages. It's very common that you need to be able to receive messages, maybe from outside partners, outside applications, etc. But it needs to be identified and it needs to be routed back to the correct instance of a running workflow. Because imagine if you had this workflow and you had 1,000 instances running. If you're sending out a message to someone, you want to make sure that the response gets back to the correct running instance of that workflow. Now, in many cases, you can't tell whoever's sending you information to modify, say, their message or to insert something very specific in it like a GUID. So custom correlation allows you to look at any part of a message, any part of the headers, any part of custom properties or ambient properties, and combine elements of those to define what is unique about a message. So we allow you to do the same thing here. Hence, I'm going to go ahead and use, say, the inbound topic as well as a custom property as my correlation set. So let's initialize the values here. And message is the Neuron ESB message, similar to context.data in a business process. Header.topic, perfect. And the topic that we'll send our correlated request back into is going to be playa.finance. There we are. And I'm going to use a custom property. Set property, and it's going to just be MW, and let's go workflow. I'll just call it workflow ID. Just like so. And I'll give it a, let's go to unique number. There we are. That's unique for our purposes. Outstanding. So workflow ID, apply.finance, so topic, custom properties. And I'll just go ahead and do this. Now, after I go ahead and set this up, next thing I need to do is add a correlation scope. Message correlation scope, drag it on the surface. This is going to use the incoming message, so we'll go ahead and set it to use the incoming message. It's going to use that to basically say, great, my values are this. So we've just set the values here. We've just set these values. Now we're going to make sure the correlation scope uses those values. Here, if I click on this, this brings up the correlation set editor. I can add my custom Neuron ESB message property in here, just like so. And we're also going to use the topic, value of the incoming topic. Perfect. Now, mind you, I could also use HTTP headers, SOAP. I could actually use different parts of an ESB message body if I wanted to. Any combination of those to define what makes this incoming message unique. Great. Now for this, the next step is going to be just simply adding the receive shape. So here, so the idea here is this is going to follow the correlation set. For this to happen, I need to create some messages. Now we had arguments. We can create our own ESB variables. In this case, I want to create two. Payment message. In other words, we're going to be receiving payment request message that we can send to a service later, we're going to be receiving that on that receive shape. So I need to create one, and it's going to be of type Neuron ESB message. And eventually we'll have a response coming back with us. So payment response message, that's also going to be a Neuron ESB message. Pretty easy to set up. So now I've got this. My correlation ID is simply going to be correlation ID. This is basically a default one that gets created from this message correlation scope. Kind of nice. The result for this is going to be, let me go ahead and just expand this up. Payment message, just like so. And we'll set a timeout for 10 minutes. Now, what's going to happen is it's basically saying, I'm going to wait for 10 minutes to receive this payment message. Now, it's not going to wait in memory. What will happen is after about a minute, it'll serialize into the database. But then when that message comes in, Neuron will detect it. That workflow will be rehydrated in memory, and it'll start right where it left off. Pretty nice, pretty easy to do that. So once we receive our message, the next thing is, let's call a service. And we want to have the same kind of dynamic routing that we've built in other demos. So let me go ahead and grab an if statement and put it down here. In this case, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and that is I'm going to look at the action. So we had payment message. That's the message that came in here. Header, action, dot contains. And let's do I service 1, just like so. Now, it's going to go to either this, if it's iService 1, otherwise it will go on the other branch. We'll end up using our service endpoint activity, similar to what we have in the process designer. So let me go ahead and bring that up, click it, drag it. Let's drag another one. So this is going to call the services that we already have set up. Remember the service endpoints? We had payment service V1, payment service V2. So this also means here you have a message coming in, payment message. And if I click here, there we are. Let's do this as well. Payment message. That's a little p, just like so. Great, so payment message, but now the result is going to be that payment response message. Payment response message. All right, service is always going to return some sort of response. Let's go ahead and put that in there. So we've got that here, just like so. And if there's a fault, let's just go ahead and throw it. We've got more options to deal with. So dynamic routing. Action is this, come down here. If it's not, V2 of the service. The last thing we want to do is publish the response to that Playa topic so this test client can actually receive a message. So I can publish to any topic. Here we go, publish message. Topic is going to be Playa, multicast, and the message is going to be payment response message. That's simple. Hit apply. So what do we have here? Call out to an adapter, call out to an adapter, trace some info down the output window, wait for a message, payment message comes in, call one of the services, publish the response to a topic. Now I can test this right in here, and the nice thing about it, since this is doing correlation, it'll actually prompt me for the correlated message once it gets to that point. Now, I don't have anything in this file drop, and I certainly don't have anything in this queue right now. Those adapters will end up writing that message out. And nothing here, receiving. So let's go ahead and test this. First, I can send in any message I want to just start this up. I can go ahead and load some environmental variables. I need the action set, and I already have that in here. So let me go ahead and just select that action. And I need to set the source ID. Let's go ahead and set that to Playa Pub. Set the topic to Playa. Now I can start this up. We'll walk down, hitting the adapter endpoints, the correlation step, launching another window. Pretty easy to do. Now I just need to send in the right message. Let's go ahead and copy that out. Now I have these services up. Remember these services? They're just SOAP-based services hosted in the console app. So let's go ahead, I'll minimize these, bring it down, hit OK. Going down the if statement, just called the service. So we saw that our service just got called and the response went to the subscriber. Perfect, exactly what we wanted. So we know this works in the designer, just testing it. And notice I've got some output here. Let me go ahead and expand that out. Remember all those log.info lines we were writing? Well, here you have them, all writing out to the output window. So now I want to really test this at runtime. How do I go about and do this? Well, the nice thing with workflows, just like adapter endpoints, service endpoints, insofar that you create a workflow endpoint, some sort of subscribing endpoint. But unlike those, you can actually run these in their own dedicated hosting environments. All right, a Windows service. So the first thing I want to do is I'll go in deployment. We call these availability groups. I can click new. Now availability group is its own hosting environment. I can call this my workflow host. If there are workflow endpoints already in here, I can see those on the dependency tab. This allows me to choose which machines it should run on. And notice on a production machine, I can choose, say, like, hey, should this be a primary or a failover server? And what this means, essentially, this has clustering built in. So you don't need to work with Windows failover cluster. In other words, if these workflow endpoints somehow failed on one machine, they would simply roll over where they left off on another machine, right? Recoverability. I'll just go ahead and hit apply. Now I'll go back into connections. Remember, we have all these endpoints. I can create a workflow endpoint. Hit new, demo, correlated workflow. Yeah, I can enable this. I'm going to select the workflow that we just created, the demo correlated workflow. Technically, it's a workflow definition. I already created a subscriber. It only subscribes to messages submitted to playa.workflow. There we are. And hence, there we go. It's only going to receive those playa.workflow. And I'll select the availability group. Outstanding. So now we know that this workflow endpoint is going to be hosted in its own environment, cluster aware, and it's going to subscribe, start up new instances only if they get sent to playa.workflow. There's some settings I can do as well. I can limit the number of concurrent workflows running. I can certainly increase the amount of data I want to track on every message. So I'll just go ahead and increase that a little bit. So we have some knobs in here for database tuning. I'll hit apply, I'll hit save. Outstanding. So when I do that, what's going to happen is I can go back in endpoint health. Neuron's going to actually spin up its own host, availability group. And underneath that, you might have one or more workflow endpoints. So we'll just wait. Once these turn green, we'll just go ahead and we'll run our test. And what's nice about this, we'll be able to see the flow of the workflow using workflow tracking. So now that we've got green up, let's go ahead and see what happens. First, let's clear out some things. We've got this file drop, remember, during our test. And we've got this. Let's go ahead and clear out that queue. Outstanding. Now I've got Hi Mom. Remember, it's subscribing to playa.workflow, so I've got to set that to playa.workflow. No custom properties, we don't need anything, because remember, we can start this workflow using any message. So I'm just going to go ahead and send something in. Great. Now, if I go into this file drop, notice we have a file, so the workflow is running. If I go into MQ series, I can see that there's a message now in the test queue. So that ran. And I can go into workflow tracking. And if I run this report, I can see that there's a workflow waiting. Okay. Now, to finish this, all I need to do is submit this payment request. Remember, we have these services that are going to get called. This one again, and this should get the response. If I submit this, it's just waiting for that payment request. Service just got the message. Workflow just got it, right? The response got published. There we go. And if I run this, I can see it completed. I can walk through all the events. I can see the actual data. Bring this up. View the message. Walk down the event tree. There we are. I can see this received another message. There we go, payment request. How long everything took to run, how many messages were generated. Now, I don't have any persistent points in this, so let's go ahead and create some. If I go back into here, persistence is kind of nice because it allows us to tell the workflow engine where it can start. Say if for whatever reason there was a failure in the workflow endpoint. So we ship our own custom persist app. I can drag one here. Drag one right after the C# activity, after message correlation, and maybe right after the if statement. Outstanding. So here we go. Persist, send, topic, great. Calling the service. I'm just going to hit apply, hit save. Now remember with Neuron, about 5 or 10 seconds, this will actually pick up and it'll be ready to run once we send in the next message. So one of the things we will probably want to do is say, well, you know what if this payment service isn't running? Well, I'm going to take that down. Let's make sure that's clear. We'll go ahead and clear this out. Perfect. All right, that's already cleared out. And let's go back in here. We just need to publish this to playa.workflow, iMessage. If I go in here, activity, let me go into workflow tracking. I can go ahead and just delete that. Excellent. So let's see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and submit this again. Great. File out. It's there. And on the queue side, we have our message in the queue. And now if I go into workflow tracking, I can see that it's waiting. I can also see that's running with all the persistent shape, and it's just waiting on this receive. Now, mind you, another minute, it'll actually be in an unloaded state, basically stored in the database. So let's go ahead, just send in the message. Remember, we'll send this in finance before it called to service, but now there is no service. Let's send it. Well, certainly no response happened. And if I come in here, I can see that it aborted. Now, if I walk through this, I scroll down, I can see it aborted when it tried to run that service. If I double click on the red bar, well, it aborted because the service doesn't exist. Okay. So now what I can do is I can come back in here. Let's go into here. We'll just launch that service again. So now the service is running. I still have this aborted state. Well, let's see what happens. I can go in here and say, start where you left off. Service just got the message. Test client just got the response. And if I run the report again, I can see it completed this time. And if I go back in here, I can scroll down and I can see where it failed. But now I can also see where it started back up. Okay. There you go. It started right at the last persist point. So nice, provides that business resiliency, provides the recoverability, really the value of workflow, all the tracking, the recoverability, and the business resiliency it really provides you, and custom correlation. Well, that's what I was going to show you, folks. I hope that we were able to convey the richness and ease of use built into many of the Neuron ESB features. We work with our customers and our partners each day to get the insight we need to provide you with a better experience. Integration shouldn't be hard. That's why we built Neuron ESB. An evaluation version of Neuron ESB can be downloaded from our website at www.neuronesb.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you again.